lords and ladies of the realm, it is I am Mighty Sophia here to break down for you guys the latest episode of Game of Thrones. We are at the halfway mark, season 5, episode 5, Kill the Boy. So spoiler alert before we dive into the mad thick of things, as I shall be bearing all in this review. And I apologize for the late upload, as you might be able to tell, just got back from a certain location in the world. Some would call it the happiest place on Earth, but by the time I got home the other day, I was in the most fatigued state on Earth, and vlogging was not a thing that was gonna happen, so I'm glad that I held off, and would you know it, I took some notes whilst I was viewing the episode the other night, so I will do my best to track with everything that occurred in this episode, and of course any factual inaccuracies that I may happen to convey in this vlog, please lovingly and kindly correct me down in the comments. And that was quite a bit of alliteration that just happened there. So at any rate, let us get going. Spoiler zone, we are getting into it. So something that was particularly fascinating about this week's episode, that's kind of become a recurring theme of my vlogs. I have to begin everything by saying, well, that was fascinating. It's a good word. It's kind of a safe word, though. I need to get away from that. At any rate, there was quite a bit of parallelism within this episode. We see all of these young or up-and-coming rulers in the forms of Dany Targaryen, of Jon Snow, and of Ramsay Bolton. Now, despite the fact that they are all in dramatically different locations and spaces, they are all at once being faced with the classic, with great power comes great responsibility ordeal. And they are put in places where they have to make very likely unsavory choices or decisions that are going to upset a lot of people, maybe please some, maybe really piss others off, maybe piss everyone off, but fundamentally at the core of it, they have to make these choices as leaders and in just going forward with their regimes. What we get to see with Jon Snow this week, of course, is his desire to join forces with the wildlings, not for the free folk to bow to him and to recognize him as a sovereign, but rather to come alongside him and to brace themselves for the impact of winter. I mean, we were really reminded in this week's episode that winter is indeed coming, and you would think that that's something that we can't get out of our heads, but sometimes we just sort of put it to rest, and it's become something that's just so endlessly quotable and meme-worthy, and it's just permeated everything to the point where sometimes we kind of push it out like, yeah, winter is coming, you know. Kind of like, you think about, say, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and even the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show where people are just like, oh yeah, Hail Hydra, you know, it's just a thing that is said. But at any rate, so we are very abundantly reminded of the approach of winter, and Jon wants to consolidate powers by bolstering the Night's Watch and the free folk, the wildlings, having them all join together under one roof. Not necessarily bringing one group into the other, but rather just converging. And that is an extremely unpopular option for numerous parties involved. I'll get into the details and logistics of that in a moment. But on the other hand, back in Meereen, we see that Dany is faced with a very difficult choice when she discovers the severe injury of Grey Worm, the death of Barristan, and the whole attack that was waged by the Sons of the Harpy. She has to choose whether she's going to continue to put her foot down, kill off all of the former masters, and just begin anew and try to eradicate slavery once and for all, or perhaps blaze a new trail entirely, which is what Missandei kind of moves her towards. And she offers a very cool form of counsel, saying that she can only state what she has seen, reminding Dany of what she's capable of rather than telling her what to do, saying, you know, I've seen you listen to your counsel, I've seen you completely ignore them in order to do something completely different. So on as far as the multiple choice test of A and B goes, Dany elects to choose C and decides that she is going to not only free Zoe. Okay, I wrote this down. Hisdar Zoe Lorak. I've recognized the guy, but never actually cemented his name in my brain. She decides that she's actually going to marry him, while at once reopening the fighting pits, not for slaves, but for free people, and creating this space wherein the different social strata of Meereen can join together to revive that tradition, while at once reinforcing the fact that all are equal under her regime, you know. So it's a very fascinating choice that Dany makes, and I can definitely see it being problematic in some ways too, especially if she is looking to overtake the Iron Throne someday. What is she going to do with this husband of hers? Or perhaps will she acquire multiple husbands on her way to the top, you know? Lord knows, but she certainly makes a very compelling choice, which I think might possibly maybe stabilize things ever so slightly in her place of authority. Then we get to see the delightful, awkward dinner party at the Boltons in Winterfell. You know, ever so slightly, perhaps even more awkward than Dexter Morgan's Thanksgiving dinner with Arthur Mitchell and his family. I'm gonna put that out there. I mean, they all but had the whole, and what are you thankful for thing. Let's all go around the table and just ruffle each other's feathers, you know? But oh man, did they get the awkward on par. And as much as I despise Roose Bolton, you gotta love the guy putting his son in his place, because even though Ramsay is now a Bolton, he likes to remind him that, hey, you gotta make that mean something. Just because now you have this power and this acknowledgement as my legitimate son doesn't mean that you can sit around sipping wine, being a total asshat, and parading the former sort of pseudo brother of your future spouse in front of her, completely dehumanized and just making this ludicrously ridiculous situation. There's absolutely no purpose for it other than just to make Sansa uncomfortable and to flaunt what he's got. And what he's got is the ability to take away personhood. Not exactly a very becoming quality, sir, but you're ever so slightly a lost cause, and I'm not even going to go in that direction with you. So, and he is given the opportunity to stand up and to take charge and to hold Winterfell alongside his father, and that is a choice that he is kind of forced to make, being himself knocked down a couple notches by the pregnancy announcement, which I do believe that was, in fact, as is Roose Bolton's namesake, that was a ruse, simply to get Ramsay questioning himself just enough to be malleable and teachable by his father. You know, because he was in a place where he was untouchable and just spewing non-stop stupidities, and there's Bolton just very good, all fine and well. By the way, we might be having another son, so good luck trying to stay a son, you know, that kind of thing. And Sansa gets to have her little smirky moment. Now I wonder now that Reek has seen Sansa and recalls her, you know, is he at some point going to kind of come back into himself, and is he going to be so broken down by being lowered before Sansa like this that he actually reveals he didn't kill her brothers? I mean, it's a really, just a crazy little game going on in the north here, and Stannis is about to deal in. I'm just gonna say. So, I'm gonna take my little notey notes here. Make sure that I'm going through all the details of everything together. So, of course, the episode opens up with Mama feeding her babies. Dany has this very, you know, gut emotional reaction to the death of one of her most beloved advisors, Sir Barristan. So we do finally get the truth after being forced to wait a week, and we did, in fact, lose one of them, which I think is a really interesting choice, because I was kind of expecting that either we were going to lose both or that they would both still be around, you know. And as far as I know, Sir Barristan is still in the books, but hey, it's like we could compare back and forth all day. It doesn't really make a huge difference. The show is the show and the books are the books, and they go together, and there you have it. They interlock in their ways, they diverge and converge, and we just gotta let it happen. They are their own animals at this point, but they are still friendly with one another, to some extent. So, yeah. Grey Worm comes back from the dead, and later we get a little intimate scene with him in Missandei, which is very interesting. And we have to bid farewell to Sir Barristan, and Dany makes the choice to take the heads of the prominent families of this city and turn one of them into a little roasty toasty s'more for her babies down under, which was a very intense power play on her part, but I can certainly see why that was the first choice that she made. And then later she goes on to seek the counsel of Missandei, going in a very different direction. But yeah, certainly an interesting note to begin things on. And then, so we see Jon speak to the Maester in what was a very cool encounter, seeing Jon uncertain about himself and this choice that he feels compelled to make, knowing that it is going to cast him in an even worse light with his enemies, and perhaps even a bad light with those who already support him. But what the Maester says is to kill the boy. At first he says it without any context, and Jon's kind of like, who am I sacrificing today? You know? But instead it is kill the boy and let the man be born. I can see there's gonna be hundreds of thousands of people around the world getting that tattooed right here and now if they have not already. So props to you if you do. It's a pretty dang freaking cool line. I mean, that is quote-worthy as hell. But in a bigger sense, just such a cool moment, because that is precisely what is happening with this character, with the person of Jon. He is laying the boy inside of him to rest and gazing down upon this multiple choice test of, you know, do I concede to the wishes of my followers? Do I just ruin everything? He decides to go forth as diplomatically as he can, but ultimately going with his gut to try to appeal to the wildlings, to bring them all together in light of a common cause. And so he moves to make peace with them, and seeks for them to fight alongside him, and specifically appeals to, what's his name? Tormund. Oh, it's so close. It's Tormund Giantsbane, big ol' red beard, who has been in prison since the big battle last season, and they have a very interesting dialogue together, and it is ultimately decided that Jon must accompany him to make this appeal to the wildlings, while Stannis is going to go descend upon the north. In the meantime, we get a little sneak peek at Brienne and Podrick, who are still just kind of looming in the distance. And I know that some people are kind of frustrated with Brienne's plot and it seems pointless or what have you, but honestly, that's just another slow burn. They're not taking more time than necessary to explicate what's going on with her. We see that Brienne knows that this is a very unsafe and precarious situation for Sansa, and is still compelled, having served Catelyn in life, to serve her in death as well. And so she is staying strategically in the perfect place where she can gaze upon Winterfell and devise how she is going to bust in. By the way, Stannis is on his way, and we know that she has got a death-leaning grudge against this guy, so perhaps we're gonna see a little heartache going down here. But she talks to the innkeeper or whoever she encounters, hoping to get a message to Sansa, and he's kind of like, you know, what are you even doing here? And she very much stands up for herself and is quite resolute in what what she desires. I mean, it's interesting because a lot of the characters that we saw featured in this episode are in very similar places of sticking to their own convictions and going forward. Everybody is moving simultaneously in their own directions, and all of the choices that everyone is making at this point has very big implications and things that are going to intertwine with the fates of others, which just makes all of this so exciting and compelling. And honestly, this season is shaping up to be one of my favorites. There's so much at work here. I mean, never a dull moment in my book. You might disagree, but I'm having a good time, you know? So, Brienne and Podrick, still in the picture. In the meanwhile, we see Ramsay and his relationship with Miranda, who is a very interesting character, keeping things interesting, not to be boring, Ramsay Bolton. So, kinky fun times occur. Meanwhile, we see that Sansa is reminded of the fact that she is not alone in that if ever trouble should befall her in Winterfell, she can go to the tower and sound the alarm, essentially. There's this continued North remembers. Winter is coming, the North remembers. And then after that, Miranda actually encounters Sansa, which, you know, I got a little bit uneasy when I saw her approaching, because I'm like, oh god, she's going to ruin things. But what she does is it's quite a fun move, because she expresses jealousy over the fact that Ramsay is going to marry Sansa and makes some very pointed remarks about, you know, you think she's beautiful, whatever else. She threatens to marry herself in response to Ramsay getting ready to marry, and he's like, oh, you're so low born, who are you even gonna go for anyway? You're mine, you belong to me. That's the kind of guy that Ramsay is. And so when he threatens not to bore her, she seems to respond in kind by revealing Theon Greyjoy to Sansa. And that is only one of many undercurrents of stress and tension that is running through the veins of Winterfell under the Bolton regime. Again, kudos to Miranda for kind of playing the sort of friend card and then making this revelation that could potentially compromise her relationship with Ramsay. And yet, his response to it is very fascinating as well, because instead of taking everything out on Reek, who has been exposed, he offers forgiveness. And so we see the way that he instills loyalty in the people who he has crushed and traumatized and just dwindled away. We see the way he instills loyalty by granting mercy when he so chooses, keeping them ever on edge in a perpetual state of fear and trembling. But then in those instances where he gives grace and pardon, he knows that he is cementing those ties. And I think that to some extent there's a similar relationship at play with Roose Bolton and Ramsay, because, you know, if Bolton was just to consistently offer grace to his son and never once discipline him or make him feel uncomfortable or uncertain, unsure of himself, then why would there be any reason for Ramsay to be loyal? Why would there be any reason for him to make any choice that makes any sense or is in any way politically sound or smart? Because for Ramsay, it's all about him. This is his show. He wants to own people, things, places. He just is this consuming black hole. And we almost have this moment where we are invited to sympathize with him when he is recounting his illegitimate birth and losing his mother. And it becomes even more grotesque when Roose talks about how he killed the suitor of Ramsay's mother and then took her under the very tree from which this man was hanged, forcing himself upon her, raping her, and then producing this offspring that has gone forth to do very similar things. I mean, and he's talking about, like, you know, I could have just left you to die. It's sort of like a reversal of the Stannis and Shireen scene from the previous episode, though I definitely don't think Roose is in the running for Father of the Year. Stannis has kind of got that she is on lock with the way that he has looked after his daughter in the wake of her grayscale. And the Boltons are just kind of a messed up bunch, which I love that Sansa referred to at dinner. At any rate, so he's saying, like, you are my son, and I claim you. And we see the similarities between the patriarch and his progeny. They're both terrible people who deserve each other and decide to come alongside one another to hold Winterfell, come whatever may. We're gonna see exactly how that's going to play out in the future. But yeah, such a fascinating adventure. And Sansa is expressing her disgust and her disdain, but continuing to play things close to the vest until that pivotal time comes. And we know that she's going to have to seek help from someone at some point, but is it going to be Brienne coming to the rescue? Or is the message that was given to her by the woman who came in to change out the water in her wash basin, like, is that part of Brienne's thing? Is that something else entirely? Essentially, there are a lot of forces converging upon Camp Sansa right now, and it'll be crazy to see how all of that plays out. Now, we also get a little moment of seeing Gilly jumping on the reading rainbow, talking to Sam, who is visited by Stannis with regards to the White Walker that he killed, and he is told to continue his research into how to take on these undead mofos. So he gets the royal stamp of approval for doing his homework, so that's kind of a cool thing, and it's good to give Sam a purpose in the context of just all these crazy things that are going on around him. He still plays a pivotal and integral role, and we are not to forget the fact that he took out this White Walker. And also Stannis refers to the fact that that Tarly, Sam's father, defeated his brother, and he's kind of like, yeah, I respect that, I respect you, you know, like bringing him into the fam. But that was a cool little encounter that we got there. It's just been fun to have Stannis hanging out with the Night's Watch and just interacting with all these characters that we've known for so long, everybody in their separate spheres all colliding. We even got to see the Maester speaking earlier about the danger of a lone Targaryen in the world, you know, which is, it's a bit of a sense of foreboding. But at the same time, we know that Tyrion is on his way if he, God, like, ever makes it. But at the same time, she will hopefully not be alone for long, and will hopefully be in a place where she is open to the counsel of Tyrion, and hopefully he will be in a place where he can provide that with some level of sobriety, perhaps. But I do feel for the guy. This has been a pretty thirsty journey for him. And Jorah is just not having it. Not having any drinking parties at sea. But now we see that Stannis is officially embarking for Winterfell, and he takes the entire family with. Is that correct? And you know, we get to see Sir Davos bid farewell to Shireen, and the whole clan is taken off. Still those very cryptic and come hither eyes from the Red Priestess Jon. I don't really know what's going to become of that fellow and his tentative tie to Lady Melisandre, but things are in motion, baby. Jon and Stannis are going their own ways and are kind of acknowledging the different approaches and paths that they're taking. And I believe that Jon is taking a couple of Stannis' ships in going to meet with the wildlings and all the shenanigans that are starting to boil. We're simmering in the pots, but the heat is rising. Things are intensifying. Now we do get to see then that Grey Worm is back, and he reveals shame at the fact that he was not afraid of dying in battle, but afraid of not getting to see Missandei one more time. Cue the glorious kiss. I mean, they've had this relationship that's been brewing for quite a while, so it was a very sweet and tender moment between the two of them, which is then followed up by Missandei getting to give Dany some royal counsel with the whole "I'll tell you what I've seen," which again was super cool, and I loved that. That was really neat. And then all of this ultimately culminates in Dany deciding to open up the fighting pits for the free men, while at once proposing to the man who has already been on his knees in prison, contemplating the end of his life and realizing his fear of dying, despite having spoken the words Valar Morghulis earlier. So that certainly takes a bit of a twist, like, oh, I thought you were going to kill me, now we're getting married. For some people, they would say that's the same thing, but... no more anti-marriage sentiments. I'm just saying. And then we get to go back to Jorah and Tyrion's not-so-merry adventure. So they discuss the merits of drinking, though, as they are passing through Valyria, which is a very haunting and beautiful scene. So they're reflecting on this ruined and haunted city, and speaking the ancient verses told about this place when they stumble across. It's not a bird, it's a plane. It is the rebellious youth, the offspring of the Lady Targaryen herself. So he's out in the world, still hanging on, cruising about. This is quite a pivotal moment for Tyrion, because he finally sees that the reality of where he's going and what he's truly doing after being so tempest-tossed for all these months, it comes to life. And he sees this there in the sky as this, is it something hopeful? You know, the fact that he can be a part of something new, finally, that purpose is sort of instilled within him, perhaps only to be so rudely dropped in upon by the Stone Men. Now, these are the guys that Shireen would have had to live out the end of her days with had she not been treated early on. Although there's still much that remains uncertain about grayscale. You know, we're kind of dealing with the medieval ages where disease and its pathogenesis are very poorly understood. So I have a great many questions myself now, being that one character for whom I want to see redemption really, really badly is kind of in jeopardy. The guy got touched in the midst of all the crazy battles at the Valyrian Cliffs of Insanity. Tyrion appears to make it out okay. We really have no idea at this point. He seems to think he's alright. Now, Jorah is probably going to try and keep this thing under wraps, but now the two of them have a bit of a sense of camaraderie between them, so that's quite interesting. But yeah, so there was much that I enjoyed in this episode. Let me know all of your thoughts below. This vlog has gone for quite a bit of time, but I'm super into this. I'm super into this. I hope that you guys are too. I'm gonna take off. Bates Motel finale's coming tonight, so you guys take care of yourselves, alright? And as always, I will be back before you know it.
And it's something quite peculiar, something that's shimmering and white.